great to be here.
Thank you so much. And thanks for allowing me to record this. We've had huge demand of people wanting to be part of this and to see your presentation, and especially when you're talking to our local chapter members. Unfortunately, a lot of people couldn't actually be here at this particular time.
Sure.
So recording it, we'll put it on the members only part of our website, and we'll offer the link to people that kind of email saying, yeah, I'm interested. I just want to be careful who we send out recordings to and things like that. So if you're worried about how many people log in, trust me, there's a lot of people that are going to be watching the recording later. So thank you so much for this. Now I'm just going to wait for a minute for people to log in.
No problem.
That's not a New Zealand thing. However, sometimes if this happens, we do call it Māori time, but we will see. But we've got some of our long-term local ASIS chapter members here. We've got Scott, we've got Peter Foss, and we've got Johan. And they have been ASIS International members for quite some time, and chapter members as well. But yeah, how are things going over in Houston?
Yes, I'm about 70 miles outside of Houston on the Gulf Coast, on the Texas Gulf Coast. So I just recently moved. My dad passed away in January. So I moved closer to my mom, back in my hometown, which is right on the Texas Gulf Coast. So yeah, it's Houston, right? Houston's population is your entire country's population.
Absolutely.
Right? So that means it's bad news for us and good news for you, because you have plenty of open spaces. But of course, in Texas, I have a ranch out in West Texas. And so I've got plenty of space when I stretch my legs that far out west. So yeah, things are good here. We're still trying to figure out who the president of the United States is. That's going to be a long-term and probably ugly process over the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll be back to rioting certain parts of the country where people feel like that's necessary to make a point.
Yeah.
In Texas, we don't put up with much of that nonsense.
Yeah.
But we're trying to figure all that out politically. But otherwise, the weather's been good. You have to understand, Texas has 4 climates. If you live where I live, it's like living in Vietnam.
Oh my gosh.
The relative humidity is 95, 96%. And it gets quite warm here. And then you go up to North Texas, there could be a blizzard blowing, or East Texas is a little different than West Texas. So we have all 4 climates here.
Wow.
But it takes, it takes about 1,000 miles to get across Texas. So it's a big state, to say the least. But yeah, things are fine here. Things are good.
Oh, that sounds good. Now, according to our time, we're about 5 minutes past 12, and I'm looking at my phone. It's usually these last minute people. Oh, Nairi, how do you do it? How do you get on?
So I can, while you're waiting, I can ask, what does tomorrow look like? Are there any stocks I should buy, or a lottery ticket? So,
especially when we're in the future,
tomorrow, right?
Absolutely. I wish I could actually answer that, but that would be a good one. Oh, no messages yet. So I know a lot of people will
I assume you won't start the recording until everybody's on and you give me the official word, yes?
It automatically starts in a moment, but I just edit it and cut things
perfect.
down. Yeah.
Good. Scott, nice to meet you. I see Peter. I see a shadow, Peter, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you weren't a bot.
No.
Is that pronounced Johan Hans van Rensburg?
It's Johan Janse van Rensburg. I am an expat South African. So.
Very good. So you speak Afrikaans.
Afrikaans, English, a little bit of Russian, and then
no Deutsche.
I can understand it very slowly. So Afrikaans is a combination of Dutch and German.
Yep.
So yeah. So,
I studied
Oh my
over in
gosh.
what was West Germany at the Max Planck Institute in the 1980s. So if you wanted to eat, you had to speak Deutsch. Einstein Deutschland. So yeah, so Texas is made up heavy of Germans and Czechoslovakians. Most people don't know that. We have very
Wow.
big populations that migrated here a long time ago. So we have towns like Fredericksburg, New Braunfels, that are very key. So those two particular groups are very big in Texas.
I would not have guessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Air New Zealand was flying there into Houston for a while, but I think they've stopped due to the COVID thing and the ensuing
Yeah.
climate. But that's unfortunate. But, yeah.
Yeah, it's getting worse right now across the country. I didn't know anybody that has COVID. Now I know everybody who has COVID.
Mm.
So we're all taking our zinc and
All right.
vitamin C and doing what we can to avoid the human race. So,
Wise words.
but you're so are you on the North or South Island or
The
North?
North.
North, okay. Haven't made it that far south yet. So a lot of good ASIS friends in Australia.
Oh, cool.
But hope to get down there soon. Where I'm opening up a company in Perth, so I'm sure I'll get down there sometime next year.
That's amazing. What made you choose Perth to open up?
That's where the talent acquisition is that we
Yeah.
needed. And then the Australian government's quite liberal with their money, so they want business from the United States. Everybody wants business from the United States, so which is good.
It's a
Now,
good choice.
as a how old is your chapter, if I might ask?
Oh,
How long has it been around?
I don't actually know the answer. I'll have to find out. I'm Googling right now. How old are
Must
we?
be at least 30 years.
Yeah.
30 years.
At least.
Okay. And Scott, are you
David.
direct in the security business or are you a vendor provider?
I've had multiple roles within the security industry. The current format's as an advisor to the New Zealand Defence Force.
Okay. Very good. And Johan, what are you doing in the business?
I am a technical advisor to Kiwi Bank. So it's bank owned by New Zealand.
Yep.
So yeah.
So is that on as ITIS or is this physical security?
No, it started out as physical security, and probably 90% of the stuff we do is physical security. However, with the convergence of the stuff, a lot of it is turning into a little bit of the IT stuff. So I'm doing a CCNA qualification at the moment so that I can sit in the same room as the rest of the team and actually understand what they say. So yeah. So
very good. Peter?
Yeah, I did 10 years with government and sort of intelligence. And then after 9/11, I joined Air New Zealand and I was sort of manager security threats and intelligence and then crisis response. And the last 3 years had a little one come along. So I've been daddy daycare for a while and then just sort of consulting, doing stuff around conflict de-escalation and guidance around the corporates, around a few aerospace and pharmaceuticals and various other clients, but
very good.
Dried up a little bit after COVID, but sort of re-entered the full-time workforce.
I understand. Am I pronouncing it Nagiri? Nagiri. All right. So I tried. Yes.
So half the time when I order coffee, I always say Nikki.
Nikki is much easier.
It is. No, definitely. Well, I'm sorry for the delay, guys. We might get started if that's okay, but I know for a fact a lot of people will be jumping on and logging into the members only part on our website for that recording. So is it okay if we get started?
Sure.
Awesome, and thank you so much for your time, Chuck. All right, so welcome team to our third installment of Across the Globe, the series that is an ASIS New Zealand initiative to try and connect us with the world more and compare and talk and discuss and network exactly what it says across the globe. Now, I'm really excited about today. We have Charles Andrews, otherwise known as Chuck. And Chuck, I've been following you for a while. I absolutely love your social media posts, and thank you for adding me as a friend on Facebook. Now, Charles, otherwise known as Chuck, is Asst's renowned #1 world security influencer. Like, hello, how lucky are we? And he's also an previous award winner for Lifetime Achievement Award through the ASPAs. He's a noted speaker, subject matter expert, and he is the founder of Friends of Chuck, which is literally hundreds and thousands of security professionals coming together, connecting, networking, building relationships, closing deals, broadening their career opportunities. So have you got the hint? He is the man. Okay, that's where I'm going with this. So I can't speak highly of you enough, Chuck. So thank you so much for donating your time to our local chapter members. And it's great how ASIS International members can literally come together and just build globally. So we really appreciate it. So without further ado, I'll hand the reins over to you. And just to give the rest of our members a note, we will be covering chapter business after Chuck's presentation. So please don't log off, okay? So thank you so much, Chuck.
Sure, absolutely. Pleasure to be here. Nice to meet everybody. We got to do a little bit of introduction. So let me begin with the FOC story, the Friends of Chuck story. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I was fortunate enough to actually start my career at the age of 13 in law enforcement. Now, I know none of you live in the United States, and that's hard to understand, but you are familiar with an organization called the Boy Scouts of America. And in the Boy Scouts of America, there's actually 2 verticals. There's scouting, and I was a Cub Scout, and I was a wee below. And there's another one, vertical that runs parallel, has been around since the 1950s, called exploring, EXPLORING. The focus is career awareness. I lateraled over as a wee below before I became a Boy Scout at the age of 13 and joined the Law Enforcement Police Explorers. So law enforcement agencies were given a charter by the Boy Scouts of America / exploring program, and the police officers would act as advisors. So from the age of 13 to the age of 19, I logged 4,000 hours in a police car in the greater Houston area. And that was back in the 1970s and 1980s. So I got an early start. And I saw just about everything that you can see because we donned a uniform and a duty belt and everything but carrying a weapon on our person. And went out on patrol, jail operations, telecommunications, special operations, crime prevention, feeding the prisoners. It just went on and on and on. And then I immediately went into law enforcement at the young age of 19. You could do that. And I was a Texas peace officer at the age of 19. Today, I still have my law enforcement credentials as a Texas Master Peace Officer and have for almost 40 years now, for a long time. It's very unique when you can still keep your law enforcement credentials in that capacity. And I act in a reserve capacity and report to the local sheriff here in South Texas, who I went to college with, and work with him. So anyway, that's kind of how it all started for me, and I had a great career in law enforcement. And that's how I got involved in ASIS. I left Texas law enforcement and went to Colorado and did my career there. And as a kind of commander over crime prevention, that's what was my introduction to ASIS International back in the early 80s. I really found out that they were the security directors of all these companies, right? As we're all members. And I think this is year 32 for me as an ASIS member. So I got involved with them to understand what businesses really needed, right, and really wanted in the law enforcement world, and learned everything that you could about security and how much it overlapped with crime prevention. As the crime prevention director for the police department I worked for, it was really important to understand what was the investment and more importantly, return on investment on focusing on security and the risk, right? The word risk would come out. When law enforcement, we would respond, we'd like to prevent it if we could. Law enforcement is not that good at preventing, but they should be, right? But in security, all their time was spent on preventing, right? And reducing risk. And you did that lots of different ways, and that's how I was involved. Had a great career, went on to be a chief of police back in Texas. And then I went to the private sector and realized that I can't be the CSO of a multi-billion-dollar transnational corporation unless I have some strong business acumen in my background. And so as a result, I went to work for a corporation and learned systems and processes and policies and procedures and profit and loss and EBITDA and all the things that you have to do. And I went to work for a global corporation and picked up another degree while I was there as well. And from there, I was hired immediately as the CSO and senior vice president for another operation back in Colorado, and basically built a very nice business and sold it. And then First Data Corporation called me and asked me to be their global chief security officer with Telecheck. So I went back to Texas, and that's for the last corporation I've ever worked for. And that was about 7 to 10 years ago. And that was a great experience. We had 8 million merchants and banks around the world that we were responsible for. So it was very, very busy. So I've had a great career, had an opportunity to do lots of things. I've studied overseas, been to many different countries, and have a real flavor, especially with my time studying at the Max Planck Institute in Frankfurt in 1985. That was really an eye-opener for me on how things are done outside the United States of America. And actually it was very impressive, right? That there are ways to reach your goals and reduce crime and work with the community and actually change the recidivism rate. So it's not a revolving door. And that opened my eyes. And today I still utilize what I've learned while studying abroad in Switzerland, France, Ireland, England, and West Germany over that period of time. So that gives you a little bit of baseline. And after I left First Data, I started Friends of Chuck. And basically, I find myself sitting on boards of companies, both advisory and fiduciary, helping companies with 3 things. And this is part of our conversation today that we're going to talk about: strategy, intelligence, and relationships. That is our entire world. And that's why the criticality of having relationships in security is so critical, if you will. So let me expand on that. I've been collecting business cards since I was a kid in the 1960s and 70s. And I actually, this entire wall I have, and there's a whole backdrop that comes up. That's 40,000 business cards. And the business card is one of the most powerful things that you can have, right? Because you need to be able to find people. Well, I was of the mind that it was real clear to me that if you understood the person, their business, their dog, their favorite rugby team, their favorite American football team, right? What they liked, what they didn't like. These are like human profiles. And if you can build those kinds of relationships with people around the world, right, they will be everlasting and they will have great benefit to you, your organization, and your mission. So focusing on strategy, intelligence, and relationships, I built Friends of Chuck. We're now 104,000 people in 100 countries, right? I'm basically a one-man band, and I have someone who works full-time for me in my company. And we get involved in helping companies grow, building relationships, doing new friendships, helping other people as a coach and a mentor, bringing in new technologies, adopting, modifying them, and applying them to industry in the United States and around the world. And all that happens as a result of using good strategy, having good relationships, all sprinkled with a little intelligence about what's going on in the world. My day starts every day at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I am reading and studying what's going on in the industry. Think of me as a stockbroker, but not really a stockbroker. I'm out studying companies, who to invest in. Well, in the security world, I'm studying the people, the companies, and the technology, and where it's going and what the future is going to look like. And I guess you could say I'm a pretty good guesser. So I'm making predictions about things that are going to unfold here in the future in our business. So many companies come to me and I sit and talk to their board of directors or their CEO, and they think that their product is the greatest thing since, carrot cake, right? And I understand that, but everybody, you have to understand it's very human to be emotionally tied to that which you built, right, and you invested in. But I give an introspect outside of that. Where people say, hey, I'm going to work outside a box. I don't have a box. So I have no parameters and I have no definition. To me, what's important is context and contrast, right? In all things. And once you understand that, you can approach it differently. So in Friends of Chuck, we have 3 mantras, right? Dream big, because dreaming big means you're going to get something done. You're invested in it. You're going to make it happen, right? Nobody wants to dream small, do they? I'm pretty sure that's not the case. Second thing, know how to have fun. If you're going to do it, you got to have fun doing it. Otherwise, do not do it. And I remind people of that all the time. So you want to dream big, know how to have fun, and we get shit done. All right? And everybody loves it when you can make progress and you can move the needle. If you're going to get stuff done, then you're valued and you're credible, right? So that's the mantra. And it's simple. Would everybody agree that that's pretty simple? Dream big, know how to have fun, and get stuff done. What more could you actually ask for, right? So what makes the criticality of relationships so important, and it's really tough right now because I'm a big fan of doing everything in person, right? Shaking people's hands, greeting people, listening to what they have to say and what they're doing. That's very big for me. But now I have to modify that along with everybody else. So I'm taking the time to speak to people. But let's go through some of these things that I keep calling that are part of the criticality of finding and keeping those relationships. Number one, if you don't have a business card, you need it, both electronic and physical. I write notes on the back of the cards. My cards are custom made so people can write notes on the back of it. I have my cell phone number. I have my email. There is no way on this planet that someone cannot not find me and talk to me. I am accessible and I am transparent and I am available 24/7, right? That's why I get up, by the way, at 4 o'clock in the morning. Because sometimes I have some calls down under, all right? And sometimes some calls in Europe. Not too many calls to China, though. Not recently, right? Right? So, but I have good friends there, and at least in Singapore anyway. So the criticality revolves around also, you want to make sure that every time you say you're going to do something, even if it's a relationship that you don't know and you're not vested in, you do it and do it well. I was raised with a very strong work ethic by my dad. And one of the things he always instilled in me is if you borrow something, you return it better than you got it. That tank of gas is full if you borrowed their car. If you borrowed their lawnmower, it was cleaned, washed, and gassed up and returned promptly, right? And as a result of that lesson, I applied to friends at Chuck. Again, very critical. Every one of those people today will let me borrow their car or their lawnmower, right? And if I call that person, we pick up, even if I haven't talked to them in 5 years, we pick up exactly where we left off without missing a beat, all right? So make sure you're always doing what you say you're gonna do with folks. Next, on a phone call or an email or a text or a Facebook text messenger or WhatsApp or Signal or Proton or whatever it is you use to communicate, right? Make it easy for people to find you and to communicate with you, right? And always follow up with them. Always follow up with them. The success of things in life is not the thing that you invented, but rather it is the maintenance of all things. The greatest failure of industry, people, software, and hardware. The greatest failure is maintenance. Companies don't want to invest in it. They don't keep up with it. There's no management of change. There's no good processes, systems, and documentation and communication. Utter and complete failure. If you can figure out maintenance, everything you do will be successful. But you got to follow up with people, right? And at least reach out to them. If I can't find somebody, I have their cell phone number, right? And they don't answer, I text them just to make sure. Another thing I'm gonna share with you, which is really important that you should be doing if you aren't already, and some of you already have this with me, maybe the person hosting this, is you want a balance of having a professional relationship and a personal relationship with people. And how do you do that in COVID? And how do you do that from a distance? Well, you make sure that you're Facebook friends with somebody and you're LinkedIn with somebody. Both, right? See, I can't wait to hear about the Sandman. Right? So, and that goes to intelligence as well, because you have to be human with people. You have to make mistakes, right? You have to show the human side of you, and that builds actually credibility with people, right? People are going to do business with you because of who you really are, but they're not going to know who you are unless you show that Facebook side of yourself, right? You have LinkedIn, you have Facebook, but you have to be selective, right? There's some, there's certain people who are state nation actors that want to be friends with me in other countries. I can't allow that for all the obvious reasons, right? I don't want to be their friend because all they're doing is continuing to collect data on me in their database, right? So I have to be very cautious of that. All of us in security need to do that as well. So make sure Facebook, or you have an Instagram account, that's a certain demographic, right? Facebook is really for older people now. That's what they tell me, right? Right? But make sure you have that balance with folks, back and forth. The criticality of the things that I'm sharing with you today actually work, but you have to do the maintenance piece and you have to keep up with it, even if you're tired. And you have to do a conference call at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is yesterday for you, right? You got to follow through with your commitments. Go the distance, and people will do that. So I'm going to leave you with a story. ASIS International had a conference in Dallas, Texas. That's 3 years ago. The Dallas, Texas conference was, and we had a big opening night celebration. I had started something called Texas Night over the years. I did it for 4 or 5 years, and then turned it over to ASIS International, and that's now the opening night celebration. And I built that with trying to muster all the Texas folks together at the international conferences. And you can't really do that without inviting the rest of the world. And people really look forward to this event. As a result of this event, I was in a conversation with someone 2 years prior to that. We were probably in Atlanta, I think Atlanta, Georgia, for the conference. And I built a relationship with a gentleman who had since moved on to 2 different companies when I saw him in Dallas. Well, I didn't see him, he saw me. I had a long day of walking around in cowboy boots and this hat. If you've been to these conferences, you know it can be grueling on your feet and your body. And I think I shook, one year I had a piece of technology that I wore. How many hands do I actually shake, right? So that day I shook 686 hands, right, of people out on the showroom floor. Because there's a following and I didn't want to disappoint anybody, right? Some people wanted pictures, some people just wanted to talk. I give away my Friends of Chuck pins, which I'm happy to do for all of you as well. And like 680 something hands, and I was tired. I was dragging back to the hotel. And if you remember, that year we had a really devastating hurricane that wiped out the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Devastated it completely. Well, this particular gentleman saw me and was running towards me. And I was picking up pace because I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was losing my voice, which I lost every year at the Texas Nights events, talking to so many people. So you don't want to disappoint people. That's also being human, right? So you have to make the effort to shake everybody's hand, get their business card, know who they are, and like as a person, right? And their business and what they're all about. Well, he caught up with me, said, Chuck, just please give me 2 minutes. He goes, you heard about the hurricane in Puerto Rico? And I said, yeah, I did. It's terrible. It's wiped out, still wiped out today, right? It's not, it's not the same Puerto Rico. So he goes, look, we have a really big security contract down there. We can't get anybody there. Well, the only way to get there is flying a plane or on a boat. And of course, that's all about logistics and resources. So he basically said, look, he knows, look, Chuck, you know everybody. Could you get us a C-130 or a 777 or a big ship? Because we need people and we need supplies. Well, we'll take any port on the East Coast or preferably out of Miami would be the easiest thing to do. And I said, okay. So in short, I went up to my room and in 2 hours, I was able to find him a really big airplane to accommodate what he needed. And needless to say, they took care of me, which was very kind of them to do. Now, that's all about relationships, strategy, and intelligence, right? I have to tell you, they paid me well, right? And if that goes to criticality of that relationship. I mean, I hadn't seen the guy in 2 years. We picked up right where he left off, but he knew where to go and who to go to, right? To get shit done, right? As part of that. So listen, that's probably a good note to end on. So maybe we could take some questions and ask them anything that you like. It's an open forum here, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Does anybody have any questions or comments or Scott, Peter?
Chuck, just being such a people person, how are you finding it with the COVID side of things? I mean, there's only so many webinars and Zoom calls and things that you can do. Is it, are you finding it pretty restrictive?
Yeah, so I bring a little device with me to get things going. When they hear my name,
I love that.
Right? But sometimes if people are really upset with me, you know, it's like, oh, right, all these. So listen, you gotta get creative, right? And that was just an example of being creative, right? So listen, I don't think any of you are going to forget me, right?
For all the
That's the
right
kind-
reasons. For all
That's
the right
that's the
reasons.
kind of impression that you want to leave, right? My moniker is my hat. This hat is very unique. It is made by the hands of the woman who made John Wayne's hats, right? And to get this hat, it cost me a cow. Would you like to hear the story about the hat and the cow?
You have to tell us now. You cannot leave us hanging.
So one of my dear and closest friends, his name is Steve Doran. He's known in Hollywood as the Trail Boss, right? And he's a man of his own stories and rights. He's one of my dear friends. He turned me on to his hat maker in Arizona, and she is probably in her 70s, and she uses a piece of equipment made in Paris 150 years ago to make the hats that she makes now. And you can imagine she has a long, long list. So over 4 years, I've been able to get 2 hats from her. So when I went to visit her in Arizona, when I was out with Steve having a great steak somewhere in outside of Scottsdale, Arizona, we got to visit with her, and I noticed that she had a collection of cows. Now, there are these collectible cows. They're about this tall. Thank goodness, I didn't have to go take a heifer off my ranch and put it on a cattle car and ship it out to Arizona. But they're about this big, and I found out, right? I went and learned it was really interesting, right? I documented her using this technology, mechanical technology made 150 years ago to measure the circumference of my head. Okay, I'm serious, and it's like does all this crazy stuff and imprints on a piece of paper, right? And then she figures it out from there. Anyway, she said, it's going to be you're in line for your hat. I said, well, I said I really need this hat, man. And she said, well, you're just going to have to wait. And I noticed them in her house. She had this cow collection. So when I got home, I took one. I had a NASA. NASA is based here in Houston. I had a NASA cow with a orbital helmet on. It was a collector cow, right? And I packaged it up real nice and neat, right? And sent her a handwritten note. And Friends of Chuck does send out handwritten notes. People appreciate that, right? And I sent it to her, and she called me in tears, and she was quite excited about that. She says, "You'll have your hat in 14 days instead of a year." So my hat cost me a cow, right? And Steve knows that story. And when I take the hat, you have to understand the hat is made, it's a 20X beaver felt, and she imprints in gold the Friends of Chuck logo.
That's
inside.
amazing.
And each one is labeled with a gold and silver buckle all the way around it as part of it. This hat probably has 200,000 air miles. It doesn't have its own seat because it's not, it's an expensive hat, but it has its own place above. And I think I've only been in, shall I say, 2 altercations of somebody who wanted to take my hat out and hand it to me, which is a no etiquette in the state of Texas, right? So in both those, P.S., I won both times. The hat found its place back.
Was that going through airport security?
Yeah, so they know me at the airport, right? Quite well. And sometimes I'll just walk through. And of course, even with my law enforcement credentials, it doesn't make any difference. TSA has to do their job, but after a while they get to know you. And but yeah, it makes it through without too much. They want to grab your hat though, right? And you go, "Hey, you're not a Texan, are you?" They go, "No, I'm from New Jersey. I just transferred TSA to." I said, "Well, we don't grab people's hats. You ask politely, take the hat off, and run it through the machine." When we get on the plane, people think that it's just a hat, but this is a very expensive hat. It's got a lot of mileage on it, and it's a piece of history. as well. But it's my moniker. That's how people know me. Now, some seminars, I can't wear my hat because they tell me it's too much about Texas. But Texas is the friendliest state in the United States of America. I don't care what anybody tells you, because I've been to every state and many countries, right? Texas is the friendliest state. And I know that sounds biased, but it's the truth. And people will tell you. When I tell people I'm from Texas, people want to gather around and talk about all things Texas, right?
I think you're proof of that. You're proof of that yourself. It's definitely the friendliest place.
Yeah.
So if we send you a cow from New Zealand, can you get us a hat?
Well, I can't promise you. Yeah, cash cow. Yes, cash cow. Right. We have to do the conversion rate though.
You have our rugby team at the moment.
And listen, I will make sure that all of you have my information available. If anything I can help you with here in the U.S. or anywhere else, put you in contact with someone. I do a lot of mentoring and coaching for people. Have helped, I don't know, probably 50 people in my career become chief security officers of big corporations. And look, it's just quite human to pay it forward, right? As part of that. So this is part of my legacy. One of my big dreams is to, and I've been working on it for 2 or 3 years, is to build the world's first security museum. I have some people much older than myself who are icons of industry, and a few of them have already put in their will to donate their entire life collection of things, right? It's amazing what they've collected. Everything from Dick Tracy's collectible squirt guns from the 1950s, 1940s and 50s to different pieces of security paraphernalia, right? Challenge coins. There's so much out there, but there's really no home for that. So that's something I hope to work on full time at some point with two of the major museums in the United States, or building our own museum here in Houston.
Right.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Forward to reaching out to you. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Can I answer any other questions? Did anything you want to ask, please, now's your opportunity to do so.
Just for me, just the importance of the different ways in which you connect with everyone. I didn't really think about, I kind of think professionally work, focus on LinkedIn, but I mean, you definitely do bring to know a person rather than the work person, to actually know the person. Don't be afraid to connect on Facebook and those other platforms that most people know are a bit more informal. So I think, it does definitely show a person's character. Everyone always puts their best foot forward when it comes to the professional realm, but at least you get more of an insight of that person. So definitely make sure to do that more. And just the importance of having a tangible business card. I think that's kind of like gotten lost recently.
It has.
Just having something tangible. Because I remember when people hand me things, and the fact that you can accommodate writing notes at the back. So I'm terrible at matching names to faces. So I think that's an awesome idea that I'm going to steal.
Sure, please do.
But I'm just gobsmacked at the amount of connections and things that you've achieved, and the amount of support that you give industry, not just in your own country, but globally. I think the industry is incredibly lucky to have you.
Well, it's been a fun ride, and it's been a lot of work. There's nothing easy about being, and I'm not sure what the people say, hey Chuck, you're successful, and I really don't know what that means, because you see what you get here. I'm sure you can see that in my demeanor and my comments, right? Like, I have my moments like everybody else, right? I worked in law enforcement. I saw lots and lots of horrific things, lots of death. My first shooting was when I was 15 years old, officer shooting. So, I started very early in this, but I was able to train myself to look at this scientifically and not emotionally. And learn from it, right? That's why crime prevention, I did my entire career in crime prevention. because it made no sense to me. Law enforcement is great. You know, look at all the crime scene shows we have. We have CSI this, after somebody has died, we're really good at capturing people, right? So I think we should be better at preventing people from dying, is my point. So I did my whole career in crime prevention, and I was very, very successful, but I was very motivated because that made sense to me, right? An ounce of prevention is worth like 100 pounds of cure, because you can't undo. Sorry?
All the obviously there's a huge demand now for cybersecurity experts, you know, for ransomware and stuff going on in the world. But you know, what's your thoughts on sort of marrying up the more sort of softer skills around security, like, you know, whether it's physical security, investigation? You know, there seems to be a bit of a growing divergence between traditional security, and now you got sort of kids coming out of college or something. It's all cybersecurity. Just about every other job is cybersecurity. But marrying up those two, I think, is still grounded.
Yeah. So I hope this answers your question, Peter. But so everybody thought there was going to be this great convergence of this chief security officer and the chief information security into one title. Hasn't happened, right? I mean, you have to be technically gifted to understand the depths of a kernel in a packet flowing in an encrypted environment, right? And the coding behind that to appreciate all things ITIS and cyber, right? Truly, it's a certain mindset. And I've engulfed myself through my own education on how to be cyber savvy, right? Defense in depth, you know, network defense systems, all of that. So the demand is going to be huge because the World Wide Web, which I call the Wild Wild West, right, was never built with security in mind, as you know, at all, right? And you know what? The cow has left the barn and is not coming back. And he's like from here, he's already to New Zealand. He left a long time ago. Okay. And that's never going to change. And that's why you see all these vendors, and all my CISO friends are pulling out their hair and aging quickly and going gray, right? Because their job depends on them protecting their infrastructure and their people resources, right? They're port 80, if you will, right? And look, it's not going to change anytime soon, but there are technologies out there, like some that will completely mask your MAC address and your IP address. So they can't find you, they can't hack you. I mean, there are measures, right, to be taken place, but these big companies are writing big checks to these big companies, and they don't need a $40 million layered defense stack. They only need a $1.87 million solution, right? And then the CISO has to talk to the CIO, and the CIO has to talk to the board of directors. The CIO only gets 10 minutes in front of the board of directors to solve this huge exposure of their personally identifiable information, right? And then people go, well, we're going to risk this through cyber insurance. 90% of organizations never meet the criteria of the policy because they're not doing no patching. Right, it's unrealistic. They didn't patch on time, didn't patch appropriately. Why? Because the company wouldn't allow them to, because it was downtime for the business. These are the realities that nobody wants to talk about. Yeah. So there's going to be big demand, because a CISO can jump from company to company to company, bonus to bonus, sign up.
Where do their loyalties lie?
Yeah, exactly. Right. We're not going to see this change. It's going to get worse. before it gets better. But what's ironic is big companies, and you know who they are willing to risk the hack, right? And the consequences associated with that. I think you're going to see in the future bigger class action lawsuits to the tunes of millions and billions of dollars because everybody's stuff is stolen. My stuff is stolen. I guarantee you, all of you have had your stuff compromised, right? But there's no accountability for that. You're going to see more litigation around this in the future, and and you're going to see under probably this new administration more accountability.
Do you think there's a case, certainly organisations I've worked for, where it's almost empire building within silos? You know, so you got your IT security, they build up a team. Do you think there's a case for fusing all those people together? So like your crisis response and your corporate security and your cyber guys. So you've got like a whole security posture, sort of like a resilience team.
Yeah. Holistically, yes. And that is a smart move because it all falls under the same label of risk, right? So that's good strategy to put it all inside one GSOC. Everybody is forced to have conversations with each other and to work together, right? So look, here's the reality. The reality is if I wanted to, between red teaming, creating a campaign hack event, to socializing, to dumpster diving, to surveillance, right? And remember, the bad guys have no rules, but we have rules.
Yeah.
And then we have compliance and regulatory. So we cannot compete when there are no rules. We can't compete, right? And companies are only going to give a security director or a chief information security officer so much money based on how well they pitch them with a business plan, right, to get something done to protect the company. Most of them would rather have insurance, as the case would be, and do what's minimally, because when they get in a courtroom, you only need to prove 51%, preponderance of the evidence. And if they can show they put different systems in place, layers, right, they tried to prevent it. But you're going to see more litigation in the future, bigger class action suits.
Yeah, and I think that's an enduring problem we face, is that security is seen as a cost, and it's rather than an investment, and it's don't fix it until it's broken type thing.
No, you hit the nail right on the head. It's not till it's ex post facto, and then after it happens, look what happened at Target, right? Third party hayback. Right? Snuck in the back door of the back door. And boy, they found money. Everybody finds money after the fact because it can now be justified in the name of survival, corporate survival. But trying to convince them otherwise is a very much an uphill climb. Guys like me, they will bring in to the board of directors and have a conversation to help convince them of their business case, to say, look, we need to burn $1 million into X, Y, and Z. Here are the reasons why. Here's Chuck, right? Someone who sees the entire chessboard, right? And has access to the greatest strategy, the greatest relationships, and the greatest intelligence to help them be convinced. It's like bringing the guy from out of town, right? And bringing him in. That I shouldn't be necessary for that to happen. Isn't that why they hired a chief information security officer and a CIO, as the case would be? But you're going to see a lot more. You're going to see a lot more of this. But look, society is very tolerant, right? Hacking is just part of the deal, right? Is part of it. But they should be very leery and weary, right? Because all that data is being collected in a database just north of you, as the case would be.
Oh, that's fantastic, Chuck. Do any of you have any other questions or comments?
Just if we can maybe get your contact details, Chuck, through Nairi or something, that'd be.
I'll definitely send them out. I've got all
Yeah.
of Chuck's contact details on the
If
bio
you're
that you
comfortable
sent me,
with
so-
that.
Absolutely. And I can tell you now, it's my first name, Charles, Charles, dot my last name, Andrews. And by the way, that's by design in my email, right? And then it's dot CSO, like Chief Security
All right.
Officer, charles.andrews.cso@gmail.com.
Fantastic.
Easy.
Yep, that way. And that's just branding again. So people know your name. Some people put really cool blonde dude at yahoo.com. Don't know who that is. But if you put your
Not me.
name, people can always find you. And it makes it much easier for people to reach out to you. You have to make it easy for people. You have to always go down the path of thinking least resistance. So people never have an excuse. And when they call me and they have an excuse, I call them on it. So no, I'm the easiest guy to find in the world. Just Google me. That's all you have to do. And I'm on the first 2 landing pages.
Awesome. That is
Ultra.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Thanks
I
very
sure
much.
enjoyed speaking with all of you and getting a chance to know you. Thank you for the opportunity. If I can be of help to you or a resource, please don't hesitate to call on me. Okay.
Thank you so
Great,
much, Chuck. We
Thanks, Reed.
greatly
Thanks indeed.
appreciate it. Thank you so
Absolutely.
very much. And we'll let you have your dinner because it's probably almost 6 your time.
Don't mess
That's
with
why,
Texas.
that's why they made microwaves.
Oh, there you go.
He's having a
Easy.
cow.
Yes.
But
That's
don't
right.
you guys go anywhere because we've got a quick chapter meeting. But
All
thank you
right.
so
Everybody
much.
take
Chuck, for
care. Be
everything.
safe.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Terrific.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Happy trails.